Claude, ChatGPT can access that API.
So what do you do for that? Do you just type in the website name, put it in? Do you put in, like, is there an API key that you need to find that you need to put in? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so I will typically, I look for the path to least resistance. So I'll say that I know that this is accessible publicly. Can you access it first and foremost versus it going away? Sometimes, like, every AI response will be different in some capacity. Might get back to me and be like, love to help you with this task, but I don't have the information available. Sometimes they'll be like, okay, going away and working, and it'll come back and be like, I didn't have this data available, so I used this instead. It's not what you're looking for. So the one thing I can't stress enough is to be hyper specific. Like, really, really don't give AI much leniency. You know, if you tell I want to win at football, go out and build me a football model. You're going to not get back a good quality product. You have not been specific enough about how you want that built, what markets you want to beat, when you're betting, all sorts of stuff. Like, you really have to overload it with information so that it can focus on a specific task without having to kind of guess at what's going on.
Pat Mayo Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog, continuing our educational series on how to properly bet on the NFL. If you've missed any of the shows previous, hit the show notes. They're going to be down there with links, too, to make it super easy on yourself. Today, we're talking about utilizing AI in your football betting and research, and where to actually find the stats to research and what matters to help you become a better bettor this NFL season. Rob Pizzola from The Hammer and Forward Progress is in the studio with me. You've done a few of these educational videos over at Forward Progress as well. I have those linked down in the description right now. So on Circles Off, you've talked about using AI and betting, but I want to hash that out a little bit more because I'm a dummy. I need you to tell me what's going on here with AI. How can I use AI to win at sports betting?
Okay, so first and
guaranteed win.
I knew that was coming. First and foremost, I just want to preface the entire video by saying this. I am not an expert in artificial intelligence. I use AI every single day for the most insane tasks. How to plant, things in my garden, whatever. I have a lot of experience with using AI for sports betting in particular, but by no means am I an expert. I just know what works for me in terms of efficiency, how it's improved my models and things of that nature. But the real answer, Pat, is it depends on what you're looking to gain out of using and leveraging AI.
I would like to be able to cut down on my research time.
Yes.
And then filter numbers into AI to give me what I at least make sharper ideas without having to spend 3 hours doing something.
Okay. These are two of probably the best use cases for AI. The worst possible use case, and what most people are currently using.
Me picks.
This team's playing this team tonight. Who do you like in the game? Or they just post all the odds from the sportsbook that they're betting at and tell me who to bet tonight. That's the absolute worst case to use AI. And the reason that's a bad case is, we've talked about this in other videos, but the market is pretty sharp as a whole. And thinking that AI leveraging just a few pieces of research is going to beat the best bettors out there all of a sudden is not going to work. But time savings and efficiency is huge. And I think of like an average casual recreational sports bettor, everyone kind of has their own process in how they're going to handicap a game, right? Some people look at certain metrics, some people look at others. Now, you have use case one where you already know what your process is. You just use AI to automate it and to save you a ton of time. So typically, if I was, let's say, breaking down matchups every week, I think it's really important to compare two teams against one another. I want to know how this defensive line is going to fare against this offensive line, how this passing game from one team fares against the other team. I could basically just put in a bunch of stats, take data from one of the sites that I use where I traditionally handicap.
And we'll get into that too.
For sure.
And this will be, the people say no free ads. There will be free ads for places on the show today.
Sure. You throw it into AI and you be very specific with the request that you're looking for. I want to automate my process on a weekly basis. I'd like you to filter this for me, that. And that's a really, really good use case because time is valuable. Like when you work a job, whether you get paid by the hour or a salary, your hourly rate is your hourly rate. Like And when you're handicapping, you're not really getting paid for anything that, and for some people, they're actually paying to handicap.
I've been there, and I still am there.
Right, because they're losing. So using AI as an efficiency tool is one of the absolute best use cases, and it's one of the things that I do. Like I get AI now, most of pretty much everything I do is modeled out in some capacity. But let's just say I'm an average football handicapper. I can have it produce weather reports for me. I could have it produce injury reports for me. I could have it produce, take a bunch of Twitter accounts and filter the relevant information that I need for the upcoming week. Like the use cases are all there, and these are like great ways to use AI.
So do you find that certain AI platforms are better for this than others? Because when I started trying to do this, like especially cobbling together an injury report, and tried this about 12 months ago, 11 months ago at this point. So at the beginning of football season, it would give me some kind of inaccurate information on stuff. So how do you deal with that, the inaccuracies or potential errors that could pop up?
There's no great answer. I will say since a year ago, there's been a lot of advancements in AI. The models are way better than they used to be. I used to experience the exact same things as you with ChatGPT, where I'd be doing content. I'd be doing a show on Sunday night, and I'm looking ahead to next week's games. I need to know the weather for next week's games. AI produces a report for me. Okay, now I double check that against whatever, Weather Network, AccuWeather. I'm like, what the hell is this? Not even the right days. It's giving me weather reports for games that are indoors.
Or weather reports from last year, week 2.
100%. So like, first and foremost, general rule of thumb, do not immediately trust everything that it returns to you. You should be double checking, especially in the early going until you gain some confidence. But different tools will be better for or worse for different things.
Like for example, you use Claude a lot.
Yes.
I like to use Gemini for producing images, things like that, and it's very good at like time coding stuff for me.
Yep.
Weirdly, like I started with ChatGPT. I found it's like kind of the crappiest one. Maybe I'm not using it for the right things that it is geared to do, but for what I tend to use AI for, especially with my job, it produces the worst results for me.
I was a big ChatGPT stan for a long time. It was my AI of choice, so to speak. But then when I started using Claude for coding, I started to just use it for everything. Claude is my, again, no free app. Claude is my personal favorite.
This is going to be no different than when we talk about shopping around for sports books.
Exactly.
To get the best price. I'm sure each of them does something independently really well, but people end up just getting stuck on. Same as social media platforms. Some people use TikTok, some people use Twitter, some people use Instagram. Very few people are just like, you know what I'm going to do is like rotate around throughout the course of the day.
Yeah, and then also on top of that, like you have barriers in terms of like how much you can use the AI. So let's say I'm doing a heavy data-driven task. Well, I know that if I use if I use ChatGPT at the level that I'm paying for, well, I'm going to run out of space, and I'm going to have to wait like 6 hours for that to renew. So I'm on different platforms. All of this comes into effect when you're choosing which service you're going to use. In some cases, you can get away with free. Like literally, you can just use a free version of AI. Has more than enough that will work for you. But personally, I spend a lot of money a month on Claude because I always go over my usage limits, but it's useful to me. I get way more out of it than I'm actually spending.
And the time that you save, as you mentioned, just can you buy time? This is literally buying time.
Yes, 100%. But
this kind of falls into the same reason like when I founded Fantasy National for golf. It was just taking the 23 sites that you would have to visit and putting them into one. And that's now with the rabbit hole at betsportsgolf.com. Like it's exactly the same thing. Like it's the enhanced version of the product that we created 10 years ago. It's like, wow, this is like the super version of it. But it's aggregating all the information in one place so you can find it all in one place rather than spending an extra 8 hours going to like this site and then, trying to figure out a way to get the data off this site into your own model. This way, it's just all the information's there, little button for a CSV, and boom, you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I love leveraging voice notes with AI instead of typing in, but I'm like hyper specific with what I'm looking for from AI. So like,
but you know that going into it though, what you want to find. I think that is the hardest part. Like for someone like me, like what am I actually looking for when I'm dumping these numbers in?
So there's so many use cases, but from an efficiency perspective, say I want it to save me time in my handicapping. Well, let's say I'm handicapping baseball every day and I go to Fangraphs and I look at what this pitcher's, expected ERA is versus his actual. I like to look at guys who are underperforming. I will document that in full. this is my process every day. This is what I do to come up with what I'm going to bet every day. And I will feed that into Claude, ChatGPT, whatever it might be, and say, I no longer want to do this every day. I want you to automate this process for me, and this is your deliverable. This is what I want you to deliver me every day. So not just the picks, but maybe a sheet that shows me all of this or whatever it may be.
So let's talk about prompts for something like that.
Yeah.
Like, what do you actually type in to make that work?
So again, I'm a voice notes guy.
Okay. So what do you tell it to do for you?
I will. So let's just say, again, baseball handicapper, I'd be exactly that. I would first tell it what I want it to deliver me. So I'd be like, I'm a bettor that spends an hour every day handicapping baseball. I no longer want to spend an hour. I would like one deliverable every morning at 9 a.m. with XYZ. Here's how I typically arrive at those numbers. I go to Fangraphs. I check out this. I check out that. Whatever it may be, that's part of my process. I then also check out the weather, the umpires for the game, whatever it may be. I will make sure, I always tell the AI to like prompt me with any questions that it may have for you to give me, or else it'll just run with that and it might do something that is completely off base. So I'll say to it, if you can't access this data and you need me to manually upload CSVs every day, let me know, because one of the issues that I find with modern AI is we'll try to answer something for you no matter what, and you might end up, I call it garbage in, garbage out, but a lot of times you just get garbage out because they don't have a great way to produce what you're looking for. It's not a be all and end all. You don't have access to everything on the planet. If you're paying for stuff that's behind a paywall.
Yeah. So how does that work? Like if you're grabbing your information from behind a paywall, is that something that you then have to go manually input?
Could work in many number of ways. So you could ask Claude to write code that's going to scrape that manually or scrape that automatically for you. It might be something where you just copy and paste it every day and say, this is the format I'm going to deliver it to you in every single day. Go from there. To each their own. And what I would tell it, Pat, it would be different from what you would tell it. And like that's it has to suit
you personally, but I think a lot of people where they would get tripped up, especially because I like to feel like I am pretty rudimentary when it comes to using AI.
Yep.
However, when I talk to people that I know, they just don't use it. So they have no idea what's going on. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people watching this right now that are in this similar boat that, we talked about prediction markets and barrier of entries, or betting more, or scaling more in terms of your bet and the barrier of entry, that it can be somewhat intimidating in that way. If you've never used it before, like what would be a good place just to start? Open it up, blank sheet. You say you put the voice memos in. How do I start formulating something from there? I'm not even talking about building a model through AI, just getting off the ground using AI.
Right. So again, everything goes back. The starting point is always what's your goals. If your goal is, I have a process that I'm comfortable with, and I just spend too much time on it, I want to get more out of this, then using AI to automate that is huge. It's an efficiency saving. So again, for me, in that specific scenario, it's feeding as much information to the AI of what I'm currently doing in my process and saying, I need you to help me through this. And instead of me spending an hour, you get it in 30 seconds every day. There's other things where maybe you want to research something. You want to give it a research task and you're like, I'm watching these football games and I'm noticing this or I'm noticing that. Well, you can ask AI to run analysis on maybe a hypothesis that you have. Maybe you have to feed it data to run that analysis. We'll get into this shortly, but like a lot of the NFL data, play-by-plays are publicly available on NFL FastR. Anyone can access a public API. Claude, ChatGPT can access that API.
So what do you do for that? Do you just type in the website name, put it in? Do you put in, like, is there an API key that you need to find that you need to put in? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so I will typically, I look for the path to least resistance. So I'll say that I know that this is accessible publicly. Can you access it first and foremost versus it going away? Sometimes like every AI response will be different in some capacity. It might get back to me and be like, love to help you with this task, but I don't have the information available. Sometimes they'll be like, okay, going away and working, and it'll come back and be like, I didn't have this data available, so I used this instead. It's not what you're looking for. So the one thing I can't stress enough is to be hyper specific. Like really, really don't give AI much leniency. You know, if you tell I want to win at football, go out and build me a football model. You're going to not get back a good quality product. You have not been specific enough about how you want that built, what markets you want to beat, when you're betting, all sorts of stuff. Like you really have to overload it with information so that it can focus on a specific task without having to kind of guess at what's going on. So, I mean, different bettors, different styles of betting, they might be looking to use AI in completely different ways.
So I think there's going to be a lot of casual people watching this who might not even have a process to begin with.
Sure.
And we'll talk about that during research methods of what you can actually input and where to find some of this stuff. But honestly, there are tools for this already that whether they're probably utilizing AI at this point anyway. Like I'm partnered with SharpStack. It gives you your EV, it gives you your projections, it gives you your odds boards.
Yep.
It'll simulate your arbitrage for you to where to find all that stuff. Like if that's all you're looking for, I highly recommend hitting the description, going to sharpstack.com, using code Mayo, getting your 25% off. Then you don't have to deal with this. It's all done for you. But I want to create my own numbers. I want to look for pockets just like you do. And I know that there's a lot of people who have these thoughts in their head and don't know, like I can't build a model. I don't know how the fuck to do that, like at all. Yeah. And if I can figure out how to put in what I look for into either AI or a model, I feel like maybe, listen, it might turn out to be absolutely terrible and lose every time.
Yep.
But I would like to try to do that to see if I'm right or wrong. And I can at least test it out.
Yes.
At that point, instead of me making human error trying to go through everything.
I've had a friend who is not statistically savvy at all go through the process of trying to build out a model to predict NBA games. And everyone has the same AI to use. We all have the same tools that we can use. So the differentiating factor is going to be how you utilize it with the prompts that you give it. I find it's very helpful to learn as you go along. AI can be used as a learning tool. So if you know nothing about modeling, well, guess what? Now you don't have to Google everything anymore. You can ask AI to teach you about sports betting modeling. You can also ask the AI to ask you questions along the way of like, where are you interested in this? Are you not interested in this? Would you like to go down this path? Would you like to not go down this path? Now, modeling is challenging with artificial intelligence because you need data first and foremost, right? If I say, go use all this publicly available data and build a model based off of it. Well, again, I'm competing in a market with other bettors and they might be using way more sophisticated data. So yeah, you can build me a model. Is it going to be any good? Probably not. Again, garbage in, garbage out. That's what I always go back to that phrase. That does, maybe you pay for additional data sets on top of that. You throw it in there. You ask AI to go through this data and find statistics that are most predictive of playoff success or what. But again, hyper-focused. And I know that's challenging for some people. Some people don't even really know what they're looking for there, in which point I would say the same thing to them that I would say to someone who's just starting betting in the first place is like, work your way up. You don't have to go from 0 to 100. You don't have to build a model overnight. You can learn about modeling first, and then you can figure out what kind of model you want to build. Right? Do you want to build like a linear distribution or whatever you want to do Monte Carlo simulations? Like people might not know what this is, but I find one of the biggest advantages for AI, even outside of sports betting for me, is learning concepts that I originally, like maybe I would have had to watch a 40-minute YouTube video previously, but now I can get a Cole's notes on it and then start to ask questions and have it deliver me answers.
That explanation is not going to make for a good 30-second TikTok video of, here's how you beat the sports books with AI modeling.
Yeah, but the reality is most people are not going to beat the sports books with AI modeling. Even myself.
Can it make you better, though? Can you lose less?
You potentially can, but it's a slippery slope. Because as soon as you have a computer delivering you probabilities, now all of a sudden you think you're somewhere. And
I don't think that's necessarily the fault of whatever model that you predict. I feel like that is more of people's misunderstanding of probabilities.
For sure.
Which is very bad.
I mean, no matter what, let's say you did produce a model using AI and it's spitting out, these probabilities and you're betting the edges. well, you should still trust the closing line more than you should trust whatever the model is spitting out. Like the closing line is now built off of an aggregation of everyone betting into the market over the course of a day or a week or whatever. That's the problem. So if you have a model that's constantly spitting out numbers that are closing, 15% off of what the closing line says, your model's not any good. Like it just not. You're not going to have that many edges against closing lines there. So that's probably a good sanity test for anyone who is modeling with AI. It's like, okay, sure, testing out a model. I'm not saying that by the end of the day, you're going to have no edges and everything's going to converge to the close, but you also don't want to, you don't want to have 15 MLB games a day and
have an edge on every one,
especially against the close. So that's like a good sanity test. But I think for the average person, Pat, the reality is that they may not have the subject matter expertise to just model using AI. Like you cannot say to Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever you might be using.
I like to call him Claude, like he is French.
I call him Claudio because I'm Italian, and that's kind of my go-to. But you're not just going to say like, I want to bet on the NFL this year.
Build me a model.
Yeah, and even if you're way more specific than that, you still might not be giving it enough. For me, I still think you might be better off if you're interested in modeling, learning about modeling using AI, trying to build something in Excel as a starting point for yourself, and then using Claude or ChatGPT to automate that for you. Now, this is my model in Excel. Take a look at it. Where do you see potential incremental gains that can be made? What improvements can be made to this model that I'm not accounting for? Like using AI as a research assistant and as someone that can help you solve problems is an extremely effective use. Like I have what I consider to be a super sophisticated NHL model, right? Like that's my bread and butter where my livelihood is NHL. I've considered myself one of the best NHL bettors for a long time. Put that model into Claude, ask it to find where the weak points might be, and you get back some stuff that's genuinely interesting. And you're like, you know what? I never thought of that before. Maybe that's a path that I can go down. And then you can start going down these individual paths one at a time. But just like anything else in sports betting, if you are going to look for a shortcut and think you're going to get rich quick, it's not going to happen. And that's like the most ineffective way to use this technology.
Well, let's move to research methods and like what matters, what doesn't matter, and trying to predict out whether it be spreads, totals, player props is obviously going to be different if you're going to run your own projections. I feel like there's enough good projection sites out there that you probably don't need to get, unless I know that when Justin and I founded Run the Sims, I don't know how to build a model. He was good at building models. He would use that play-by-play data and use a Monte Carlo run on it, and his projections were fire for whatever way that he was able to manipulate them and what he wanted to put them for. And there's a couple different places out there right now. Again, I'll go back to SharpStack and the 4for4 projections. They've been really good. And they've been tested for the past 15 years or so, that they always come out ahead of market, especially earlier on in the week. So maybe it's not props that you need to look at this for. It could be, but spreads and totals seem like it's a much different beast when you're trying to model something out and trying to research stuff.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about modeling props versus spreads and totals is oftentimes it'll actually just be the same model that produces everything. But also maybe you just want to use, like, you have to use some critical thinking, right?
No, I can't do it.
But if I wanted to model player props and I didn't have a projection for what the point spread and the total would be in the game, I don't have a model that's modeling that. Well, I will just use the market number.
So that's what we did. Instead of building out the spread and points total, we just used the publicly available aggregate mean information, pumped that in, and we had our player data.
Exactly. And that's a pretty decent way to build out a player model by just saying, okay, I think that whatever, the point spread could move in a game, the total could move in a game, but right now this is what we consider to be the source of truth. Let's use that number and let's start aggregating player props or producing player props based off of what the market expects the spread and the total should be in the game.
So if I was to prompt that into AI, for example, I feel like that would be somewhat challenging until I taught it what I wanted to know. Because what I would want it to know is, So I would want to be, you tell me where I'm wrong on this. If I'm trying to dive into building a player projection model here, like let's go to SharpStack. I'm going to download the CSV and I will take the smorgasbord menu of every single site with every single spread and every single total all on the screen, have those come in. I will pump in that data for it. And now I want to say, let's build out a player model for this particular game. Mm-hmm. Do I now need to go player by player and assign a target share to that, a play volume for that? And say, hey, I want this to be run 1,000 times using a Monte Carlo system where I get the back end and the high end approaches to build me a range of outcomes.
A lot of things you said there that I'll pick apart. Yep. So like when you would tell the AI, I want it to run 1,000 times, I would ask it, what do you think is the optimal amount of times for me to run this?
10,000.
Yeah, because you want to strip out 1,000, you'll have a lot of variance in that number. So it might come back to you and be like, I think you should run 50,000 times. Any more than this, the incremental gains you're going to get don't offset the amount of time it's going to take. So again, using it as kind of like an assistant to help guide you in what you do is important. But I would, again, want to get rid of as much manual work as possible. So I would not really want to, if you're going to come up with a target share.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know how to assign that into AI without typing it in myself, rather than stealing it from some site. Or
maybe that's the way you do it. Maybe it's as much like the real challenge when you're modeling is testing the model, right? You can build a model.
Yeah. How do you know if it's good or not?
So what I typically do is I take a long period of data and I only feed a portion of that data. Let's say I have 10 years of NFL data. I might feed the first 8 years to AI and say, we're only building modeling based off of this because I don't want the data from year 9 and 10 to leak into the model, but I want to use those first 8 years and then test the model that's built off of those on year 9 and year 10. I would do something similar with producing target. So I face a similar problem with time on ice for NHL. If you can predict time on ice, just like if you're, any prop that you bet, there's usually like another underlying metric that is as good or if not a better predictor of the prop. So like if you're going to go to the NBA and you want to bet a player's points, well, you can go look at the last 40 games that they played and look at the points in each individual game. But if I use points in conjunction with the minutes that they play, I'm probably going to have a more accurate model than just using points. So you always want to add those layers of depth. So I like to train the models using past data is essentially what I use. This is feed it as much data as possible and say, tell me what's important for projecting, I don't know, what in the NFL, like receiving yards or something. It's probably going to say targets, are more important.
Along with something like pace of play.
Right.
Or pass rate over expectation would probably be another good thing to pump into that as well versus a team, and then try to quantify that versus the opponent and what they normally do.
And let's say I don't even know, say I'm not a subject matter expert in the NFL and I don't know that. Well, now I can use AI as like a research assistant for me where I'll be like, okay, targets seem to be really important for projecting receiving yards. How could we possibly go about projecting targets? And it might spit out some ideas for me that I can take a look at, or it might say, I need this piece of data in order to do so, or, so many different routes. And, that I view it as kind of a logic puzzle where I have an assistant with me who's I'm bouncing ideas off of and saying, does this work? Does this not work? There are people who will just feed enormous amounts of data to AI and say, take all this data and figure out a way to go and produce the most accurate probability on, who's going to win the game. Just as a random example. I don't love doing stuff like that because now it's just like a black box to me. I'm going to get a model. I can ask for the documentation on how it works, but I don't know how it works. There might have been decisions that were made along the way that would not be decisions that I think are the best way to do that. Maybe I'm now super reliant on data that's coming from, I don't know, NextGen stats or something like that.
Versus another place that might have better data.
Sure. Or like that might be behind a paywall next year. And now all of a sudden I'm paying, $500 a month or so. I'm just trying to talk this through as best as possible.
Well, I think that's the helpful part of this. Like not even just where do we start? where are their flaws, like you picking apart what I would want, like the first thought of what I would want to do is really helpful for me in thinking about that.
But at the end of the day, the goal for us and why we're talking about on this show is to use it for betting. So you have to, in theory, prove that it's going to beat the betting market. So everything I do, I would always, it's challenging to get historical odd sets. I'll be completely honest about that. There are companies that charge a lot of money to get historical odd sets so you can get the openers and the closers. I've spent years building out my own databases for that, where I just store odds at different, guess what? AI can do that for me now as well. It's like store the odds at this site at these different periods over the course of a day. But you want to build out as much as you can so that you have like this testing infrastructure. Now I know if I make this change, I can test it against historical odds and see whether or not it improved the model. And of course, I don't just make changes that don't make logical sense. I think they have to be rooted in logic. Too many people just do that. They're like, oh, find a way to improve my ROI, and it will find a way to do that, but it's built off of something that makes no sense, and it was just a complete random change that happened to change your past ROI. So these are thinking problems, but you have what I consider to be maybe the single most valuable piece of technology we've had as bettors, where we now have the ability to run research tasks that could take months in minutes and have another intelligent being that has all this information that we could just bounce ideas off of. And that's how I treat AI. I treat it as like a partner in what I'm doing, but not as the be all end all.
Did you know there's a version of your home that you haven't even lived in yet, where the rooms actually feel finished? And more importantly, the sun isn't blasting you in the face at 6 in the morning? Blasting in the face at 6 in the morning. Don't know what you're up to, but the sun will get you. That's what it'll do. It'll wake you up for the day, and it'll be awful. Everyone's had those blinds that drive you insane. They're crooked, one side rolls up higher than the other, and you live with them for way longer than you should because replacing blinds feels like a hassle. Blinds.com actually makes it incredibly simple. You can customize your window coverings, get samples shipped to your door fast and free, and even add professional measurement and installation. They've covered more than 15 million windows over 30 years, so you know what they're doing. Right now, Blinds.com is giving my listeners an exclusive $50 off when you spend $500 or more. Just use code Pat Mayo at checkout. Limited time offer, rules and restrictions apply. See Blinds.com for details. I started taking creatine because I'm working out consistently, and if it's something I'm going to use every day, I want to know I'm actually getting the highest quality product. You should too. That's why I use, and you should, Momentous Signature Spec Creatine. Creatine's already one of the most researched supplements out there, supporting strength, power, lean muscle growth, recovery, and health. Even cognitive performance, which in my elder age I actually need at this point. But Momentous has taken the quality side to a whole nother level. Signature Spec Creatine is manufactured in a pharmaceutical facility using reverse osmosis water purification, and put through an expanded 6-stage testing process with 4 independent agencies. That means 10 times fewer impurities, tighter heavy metal limits, and plus PFAS and microplastic screening. All great stuff. And the ultra-fine powder actually mixes easily without those gritty clumps that you see those weirdos at the gym have, so it's simple for me to work it in to my everyday routine. That's the Momentous Standard. Try Momentous Signature Spec Creatine at livemomentous.com and use code PATMAYO for up to 35% off your entire first order. That's livemomentous.com, promo code PATMAYO for 35% off. August is a great time to hit reset before the fall starts getting crazy, and that includes finally replacing some of the stuff in your closet you've probably been wearing for, decades. Anyway, way too long. That's where Quince comes in. Quince is all about fewer but better prices, premium everyday staples without luxury brand markup. You can get their organic cotton tees, Mongolian cashmere sweaters, premium denim, or tailored chinos starting at just $60. Everything is designed to last, and because Quince works directly with ethical factories, you're getting prices 50 to 80% less than similar brands. I got Quince stuff all in my regular rotation now because A, it fits well, B, feels high-end, and C, is easy. These are the basics you can wear all the time without ever thinking about it. I use the stuff, you should too. Upgrade your everyday. Download the Quince app for app-exclusive offers. Go to quince.com/mayo. Get free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada and the UK too. That's QUINCE.com/mayo. So if we wanted to start researching, and as you've said on the previous shows, the best time to get in is as early as possible.
Right.
By the time we get closer to the games on Sunday, now your research doesn't mean anything because the research is just in the number.
Right.
At that point. So how can you beat the number? If I want to start looking for key metrics, sites to look for this at, so I can get out ahead of everything, where do I start with that? Because I've been using FTN data, which I find is very good. Obviously, SharpStack, if I'm just looking for like early projections on things so I can start to get a handle on it. It's giving me two different data sets that I can compare against one another. Fantasy Points has been very helpful. But sometimes, like, look, for as long as I've covered football and watched football, the amount of 3 zone that's being played against this team, it's like... That's fun and everything. I don't know how valuable this is going to be in a particular matchup. You can be like, well, this team, they really struggle against dime defense, and this team plays dime defense 80% of the time. It's like, well, there's a chance that the other team just manipulates their strategy for that game because they have the same thing I'm looking at.
I love this, Pat, because I was probably guilty of this in the past as well, where I'm like, wow, this team plays a ton of cover 3. In this situation, they play a ton of cover 4. Yeah, these teams are game planning for one another. So, like, one of the things that I did last offseason, which is a huge research task, is like, are these consistent from game to game? Like, when a team plays a lot of cover 3, do they do that consistently across the board? If they play another team that struggles against that type of defense, does that team then change their offense? And yes, you see that across the league. Like, these coaches aren't stupid. They watch a lot of tape. They get the same numbers. And honestly, a lot of the game plans in the NFL now are probably being fed
into AI
as well. So, it's not as simple as saying, well, this team it plays a ton of cover 3. The other team kills cover 3 defenses. Like, well, guess what? They probably know that. But then there's instances where you'd feed it through and you'd be like, well, there are some defensive coordinators in the league
that just don't change anything.
Gus Bradley would be like a great example of a guy that, they're just going to play the same type of defense over and over. The 49ers did this a lot last year.
Well, that was a lot personnel related, I feel like, because they were so decimated by injuries that they had one strategy that they had to take. Saleh dialed it up, and it was effective enough for them to win games, which I feel like is a really good coaching. I mean, it's probably why he got a head coaching job again. But, like, what do I have to work with here? And even if this is a very beatable defense for this team, it's still the best option we got.
Yeah, for sure. You can't fault them for what he did. They couldn't rush. They had no pass rushers, so they just sat in coverage, and they said, like, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. If you can string together 15 great offensive plays and score a touchdown, then so be it. That's the way it's going to work. But those are types of questions that I always have, and I'm always thinking about this when I watch games and how I can possibly improve the modeling that I do. But this is at a level that, like, not everyone has to be at. This is because I'm competing on, like, sides and totals in the NFL, and I want to bet into the biggest markets. You don't have to do that necessarily. You might just want to build a model that gives you an edge on, I don't know, so even some game props or something like that, which will be a little bit easier to beat.
Well, now just to you talking about that, if you could figure out, and I don't know, maybe this is actually a great question for you, that if defenses changes and schematics changes and tendencies change when certain guys leave the field.
Yep.
So if we're in first and second down, obviously you'd have to know the opponent, down and distance, and score. All that stuff matters to what's coming out of the other side as the input here. But if you end up in a third and long situation and you put two other, like Joey Bosa, which one's the good Bosa? Which one's the bad Bosa?
It depends on their age. Right now, Nick Bosa is the 49ers better.
Okay, so Joey Bosa. The Bills were using him in a third down situation last year. Like, let's get him on the field. Maybe he can disrupt. Then guys got hurt. He had to play a whole bunch. He was just not able to hold up at that point. But if he's just coming on the field for third downs in third and long situations where it's a clear passing play, what does the offense do to how does the defense work now that he's on the field versus what does the offense tend to do in these situations? That if you could remove a player, put in a player, I would be thinking that for live opportunities, information like that, if you could somehow store it and have it instantaneously, could be very valuable.
So absolutely, and that's like a hypothesis that you can test using AI. So to me, any sport that I'm going to try to wager on seriously, I want to give the AI as much data as possible to work with. I spend a lot of money on data every year for things that I do because if you want to train a model and you would just want to have access to as many things as possible that could potentially be important. Then I start testing theories based off of that data. Like now we have individual level player stats in the NFL, like speed. We're tracking speed with NextGen stats. That was not something that was available 5 years ago. And it's like, can we make incremental improvements to this model by understanding maybe some patterns in speed when a very fast set of receivers plays a slower group of corners? Does that impact the passing game in a way that's meaningful enough for me to incorporate that into the model?
Or even to take a look at, in this sort of situation, if the delta between the speed on offense and the delta between the speed on defense is X amount,
right?
Does that change the entire schematics of a defense in that situation? Do we see tendencies that, do they go from cover 3 to playing more nickel, or do they then just jam the box or send full out blitzes to get that ball out quicker so they don't have to keep up with these guys all the way down the field? Like that stuff is very interesting to me. But now we're talking about different data sets that it feels like if I was able to prompt AI properly, that they could tell me the results of this information.
100%. And you can use it for all sorts of troubleshooting too. Like I could tell you the limitations of my football model, or just I'm hyper vigilant in tracking how I do on everything, every bet I make or whatever. So now I could feed all my betting history.
See, that's not smart. What you need to do is only track your winners.
Well,
and then you feel like really good about yourself.
You do. It's great for the morale boost, but it's not gonna teach you much.
Well, we have those guys in our group chat. Like if they're betting every day and you only hear from them like once every 2 weeks with a nice win, I'm guilty of it too, because everyone likes to post their winners, likes to brag. It's like, I haven't heard from that guy in 3 weeks. He must be down a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean that's just the classic story right there. But yeah, for me, I know historically, since I've started betting NFL seriously, I tend to struggle in the first 4 weeks of the season. I never really could explain why, because I'm hyper-focused in the offseason on being ready for the upcoming season.
What was it that you were using too much of last year's data?
It was not that. So I really went back and forth with Claudio, on this particular topic, but it's the way that I treat young players with limited sample sizes. Because like when you have a quarterback that get drafted and is starting in the league,
you have no information.
You just have his college stuff. And I found some ways that I was probably not using and making some assumptions on what these players are based off of the slot that they were drafted in. That was typically what I did. Lots of mistakes were made. Worked with AI to find a much better solution, tested it against previous seasons, and improve the model. And hopefully this year
it works.
Hopefully, I mean, in theory, it has improved things. But yeah, like knowing where your limitations are, where there can be improvements made, like it's all of this stuff. And there's no one right or wrong way. I think if you were to poll thousands of professional bettors that use AI, you would get so many different use cases and so many different ways that people use it. And some people, they will fully trust. They'll just, like I said, feed tons of data in and say, my goal is to predict this metric, take this away and go see what you can do with it. But then to me, like you can't really take, at least in my opinion, an iterative approach where you're
not building off anything there. You're just getting a result. No idea how they came to that conclusion. And you're like, well, I gotta trust it.
Yeah. And then your model sucks in a particular aspect and you're like, I can't figure out what this is doing here. Like I don't like black box machine learning type of stuff. Some people stand by it and I prefer to be part of the process, but others might be, Rob, you're out to lunch. I love this. And I can, so to each their own, but at the end of the day, the more data you can give that could potentially be meaningful, not like, zodiac signs of players. I mean, listen, maybe there is.
Now, what if they were all cat teams? Is there a model for that?
Bird teams versus cat teams? Is there some sort of is there some sort of thing here? But yeah, generally, I think there's more you can do with AI when you're giving it more to work with. Okay.
So if we think about research methods in a different way, so we've mentioned a few different places already. What was the site that you said that has the free play-by-play?
NFL FastR. But so there's actually a site that consolidates this that's a little bit easier. It's Ben Baldwin's site. The easy way to remember it is runningbacksdon'tmatter.com. So it's the abbreviation RBS for running backs, DM.com, built by Ben Baldwin. And that aggregates EPA per play, success rate. You can filter that really easily. The one challenge, I think, of working with a site like that is you have to manually export a lot of CSVs, which for some people it's fine. Some AIs have attachment limits on a chat or a project, so you have to work around these types of things. But that's a absolutely great site and great tool, completely free as of the last several years to the public to use. FTN, which you mentioned, Pat.
I was a co-founder of FTN Data, so I'm no longer affiliated with them, but okay. I really enjoy what they do.
It's an incredible site as well for data collection. But also remember in the NFL, Pat, definition of maybe like a pressure.
See, rbdm.com?
RBSDM.
Oh, RBS. I was like, that site doesn't exist.
Yeah, RBSDM.
There we are. We're there right now. Oh, yeah. Nice little graphs too. This is great.
Yeah.
I find this is a big barrier of entry for people when they're researching football, that it feels like when people think about golf, they think about, well, they did think about Fantasy National, they think about the rabbit hole and data golf.
Yeah.
Those are the two places that they go to research golf.
Right.
With baseball, you mentioned Fangraphs. It's been Fangraphs, or where the other one was way back when. I totally forget what it was. There was two of them.
Well, now there's Baseball Savant.
It was Baseball Reference back in the day.
Yes, right.
Were like the two that everyone went to. With football, where stats, I don't want to say that they're new, but there's the avenue to create new stats with all this new information in the NFL has really evolved, especially over the past 3 years, let alone 10 years.
Right.
That so many different sites do different things well. Like for a while, people go to Pro Football Focus. And it turned out Pro Football Focus was pretty antiquated for the past few years.
Yeah,
in certain aspects.
Listen, I still think Pro Football Focus can be valuable.
But they're not the market leader where they once were.
I would agree with that.
Because there are other sites that are independently doing things like this that people just might not know about.
Yeah. You also get like a lot of other complex problems where, different sites define something in different ways. If you look at pressure rates in the NFL, there's lots of sites that track pressure rates. They're going to be very different in terms of the numbers. So now which one do you use as a source of truth versus these are problems that we have to coverages. PFF tracks coverages, FTN tracks coverages. There's other sites that do as well.
They're not always going to be, there's human error and there are human interpretation in those numbers.
Exactly, right? Which is why I'm very interested in player level modeling and tracking of like positioning on field. I think that's kind of like the next venture that I'm really going to get into and produce my own numbers instead of relying on other sites. But yeah, there's a lot of problems to solve. And depending on what your goals are, you could be led in completely different directions depending on what you're trying to do.
So when like a site like this, the rbsdm.com takes into consideration pressure rate.
Sure.
Are they using an average of what the other sites say? Do they have their own interpretation of that? How would that end up working?
Yeah, so they're deriving everything. See, they don't. Do you see pressure rates on there?
I didn't look for
Okay.
it.
I'm pretty sure they don't track pressure rates.
Okay, then
so,
fair enough.
so the only reason I say that is because they're basically pulling those graphs and those charts from play-by-play data.
Okay.
And nothing in the play-by-play data
would have that.
Would have a pressure in there. But it'll derive EPA for you. It will derive success rate for you. You can filter by, when I model any sport, I like to strip out what I call luck.
I'm under the luck tab right now.
And randomness, right?
But some of these, like some of the things that are currently listed under luck, for example, I don't necessarily know that they're all luck. Like last year, Philadelphia scored on 70.5% of their red zone trips. Seems like a very high number. Also a very good historic red zone team.
Sure, 100%. Great great observation. You're a ball knower. You know, Jalen Hurts runs, he sneaks on, and that generally works for them. So every piece of data, there's context that associated with that data as well. But like, I'll give you a random example, right? Quarterback at the end of a first half of a game throws a Hail Mary for an interception in the end zone. Should that count against the team as an interception? That's going to be a lot of negative EPA. That the success rate on that play is, it's a throwaway play. He's going to take a shot.
It means nothing.
Yeah. So why would I include that in my data set? So when I'm pulling NFL play-by-plays, I'm stripping out stuff that I believe should not be included because it's going to skew things one way or another.
So this is what I do with golf data as well, especially when you're tracking things like trying to bet daily and do head-to-heads. That if you track strokes gained approach for that day versus the putting, it's just a very shorthand. It doesn't mean everything, but it's a good way to look at, like, do guys overperform, underperform versus their baseline in both those stats? Can you find sort of the weighted average of that? But if someone has a hole-in-one on a certain day, all of a sudden their strokes gained approach is amazing.
Sure.
So if I can reset that to they hit it to 1 foot, it's a gigantic change in how they did that day, where we know that a hole-in-one is just all luck-based. Guys could hit a 3-foot circle around the hole all day,
right,
be given one set of things. Theirs hits a bounce the wrong way and goes into the hole. That's great.
Right.
There was no skill involved. There was skill to hit it to the 3 feet.
Yep.
There was no skill to put it into the hole.
Exactly. Listen, these are also, another research, I'm fine to say this stuff or whatever. I don't want to give too much away, but like another research task that I'll run every week is I will have Claude take all the play-by-plays of the week in the NFL and just filter all the penalties for me. I want to see every single penalty that was called. I will then watch the abbreviated versions of those games and I will look at the penalties that were called. And in any instance where there was an egregious penalty, in my opinion, that shouldn't have been called, I will alter the play-by-play for that, because I think that's very misleading moving forwards. Like if you get a huge defensive pass interference penalty down the field that was just a completely bogus call, I don't think that should be used against
a defense.
Yeah.
And now that and especially because that can compound, that would put them now into a super negative position where they just would never have been at that point of the field, whether it's giving up points, because it's a team that's historically like the old Patriots, Brady years, They'd give you some yards between the 20s. When they got to the 20s, they were great. There's also teams that work the opposite of that.
Yes.
That are just great at limiting you from getting to the red zone, because once you get to the red zone, they're not very good.
For sure. But there's also, there's still limitations on that. I have to do some manual work for that. I'd love to be able to do the inverse of that, which is a penalty wasn't called on the play. That's not flagged but that should have been called a penalty. I don't think that this 40-yard pass should have counted when there was a pick on the play. That is probably going to get called 9 times out of 10, but didn't get in this instance. So that's where I'm at the point now, is using AI as a refinement tool. I already have a good structure. I built this long before AI. Once AI came around, I started uploading the models and being like, find holes. And now let's go attack and see if there's really a hole here. Because that's, again, you tell AI to find a hole in your model, it might be like, this, and then you dig into item number 2 and you're like, well, actually, no, there's nothing to this, and all that stuff. So yeah, it's like super, super powerful research assistant.
If you were looking through some of these sites and you wanted to find the most important stats for context of what's happening in a game, is EPA per play the one you would look at the most?
Yeah, so it depends on, you want stuff that's predictive of the future.
So what do you think is the most predictive?
Yeah, so EPA per play can be, but again...
But isn't that also a storytelling stat, sort of like what WAR is to baseball? Like, you can look at someone's WAR, that's great. WAR doesn't tell you anything besides how they have performed. Is it really predictive of how it's going to go forward? Not especially.
So
it can be, it could not be. But like what you said earlier, the difference between FIP, XFIP, and ERA, you have a baseline of what the result was, and you have now an expectation of what it should have been. I can take the difference and be like, okay, in context, this makes sense to me that why are they now overperforming or underperforming? Is there something there? Is it batting average of balls in play? Is it hard hit rate? Like, I know the different things that go into that. I find that more difficult in football.
For sure. So you might have one stat that is super predictive of the future, but almost in any sport, you're going to have a lot of stats used in conjunction with one another. So like EPA might be slightly predictive. But now using EPA and success rate together is more predictive than just using EPA. Now using EPA plus success rate and stripping out, let's say, fumbles or something like that might be even more predictive than that. So usually it's like you'll have this suite of things that you use that work. And like the most recent model that I built from scratch was NHL playoffs model. That's the most, I normally finish the regular season and I stop because in the past I've used the same model from the regular season.
It doesn't work.
Of course I'm an idiot. Like I'm like, well, we do so well in the regular season. Like, we return 12% on this, playoffs come and we lose money because it's fundamentally a different game. So I rebuilt that from scratch. But what's really predictive of playoff success in hockey?
Grinders. How much heart and grind do you got?
Absolutely not. No correlation whatsoever.
How about hot goalie?
Hot goalie, yes. But the numbers from the regular season predicting a hot goalie in the playoffs,
impossible.
It's voodoo. Yeah, of course you're going to win in the playoffs if you have a goalie that plays really well. But a lot of the regular season goaltending numbers don't correlate strongly to the postseason. But you can come up with numbers that are really predictive in the postseason, but then you can apply like filtering on those. So a really good predictor of hockey playoffs is your expected goals and your Corsi, but against playoff opponents in the regular season. So if you strip out the games against teams that didn't make the playoffs, all of a sudden, your correlation is much, much stronger. So
I would expect football to be the same. It'd be like if you ran the Ravens through a model last year and they just sucked against every playoff team and beat every non-playoff team.
Of course. And these are things I'm constantly thinking about. Like, listen, you might prompt AI and it might lead you down this path where you can uncover this yourself.
Well, I'm just typed in, give me EPA plus success rate plus who wanted it more.
Oh, who wanted it more?
Well, that's
obviously very easy to quantify.
Clearly, you can see who wants it more because they won.
Dan Campbell, number one.
So someone actually, this was one of the comments because I was making the case that Dan Campbell, I don't think he'll be on the hot seat this year, but if they struggle again this year, I think he starts to become in question. Was this all Ben Johnson? Is he past his time? Have people tuned him out? And someone said that Dan Campbell is just Nick Sirianni with way better PR. Or Nick Sirianni is Dan Campbell with terrible PR. One of these guys won a Super Bowl and went to another one.
It's true. I also, we're getting on a football tangent. I don't think Nick Sirianni is nearly as bad as people make him out to be overall, but this stems from my belief that Jalen Hurts is a garbage quarterback. So Philly fans in the comments, you could probably let me know what you think about that.
Yeah, but in his does he want it more model, very high for me. Always wants it.
Sirianni?
No, Jalen Hurts.
You
get him out there. Not only does he want it more, he raises the baseline of everyone else wanting it more. He's a real leader.
Jalen Hurts wants it more. I mean, the guy doesn't throw over the middle of the field. How bad can you want it if you don't throw over the middle?
Well, he doesn't want to get his receivers injured over the middle. That's him wanting his guys to be put in good spots, not to be hurt.
Well, he's got Mekhi Lemon this year. If he doesn't throw over the middle of the field now, then there's absolutely no point in drafting that guy. But yeah, it's this has been a really interesting conversation because I start to think through like, I use AI so much now, like so much, and that sometimes it's lost on me of like how I actually use it and the paths I've gone down in the past to build out different models. But yeah, generally you want to, if you're modeling, which not everyone has to do, but if you're interested in that, you do want to feed as much data to it as possible. You want to make it automate. You want to be very specific about this being automated. You don't want to have to go and manually run things all the time and things of that nature. And you want to be very specific about what the outputs are that you want to receive.
Another question about research, less about AI in this sense. Maybe AI can help me do this with the right prompts. I find a lot of these sites that you go to, they'll give you EPA and then there's weighted EPA. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between that? How do I learn about these things?
That's a great AI task. What's the difference between weighted EPA and EPA as defined by whatever site it might be? Some of them will adjust for strength of schedule
and opponent
or the score in the game as well. Because let's say you're trailing by 21 regularly, it's gonna be easier for you to pass the ball for the most part. Teams are going to play really soft defense, right?
Because I found this was a very big thing when I was writing about sabermetrics in like 2012, that I knew how to use them then, like whatever rudimentary version that we had of sabermetrics, 13 years ago.
Right.
And my advantage over everyone else was so big.
Yeah,
It wasn't even close because people just had no concept of what this was. And if you ask me how to calculate WAR or FIP, I mean, batting average of balls in play is very rudimentary. That's a very simple concept.
Yep.
It's explained in the title. But to calculate FIP and XFIP, which would be expected FIP versus ERA. I understand how ERA is complicated.
Yeah.
I have no clue how to calculate FIP or XFIP, but I know what the outcome means.
Right.
And sometimes I think that people get weighed down in the minutia of, well, I need to know everything that goes into this certain stat. Sometimes, if you're someone like me, or someone even more advanced than me, or even less advanced than me, that's just knowing what the stat tells you, whether you can calculate it or not, I think might be irrelevant. As long as you understand what the output is, then you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah, so listen, I do believe that there's a fundamental importance in understanding the stat. Just because it
would I need to know how to calculate it?
No, but you should know what at least the variables are.
Sure.
Like the difference between FIP and XFIP. I haven't bet baseball in like a decade now, but it's something to do with the defense in particular, or how home runs are. I can't remember it, but there is a difference, and knowing the difference between that metric can be vital.
It can be vital, but if you're just looking at it on the surface, like I find that if you understand what the outputs give you, you can directionally start being correct with what you're looking for.
Sure.
Then you can dig into it more.
Yeah.
But if you have no sense of what this is actually telling you,
Yeah.
regardless of what goes into it, if you just have a misunderstanding of what this number means in context versus other numbers,
Right.
you're pooch to begin with. That's why you have to learn what all this stuff is first before you can start to reverse engineer it.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of these metrics that were made like that are just kind of getting to of what I try to do with betting, which is like stripping out luck as much as possible. Like I remember back in the day for baseball, you talk FIP and XFIP, but like there was Sierra, SIERA, and there's also like expected ERA. All these metrics are better predictors of the future for that pitcher than his actual ERA, because a lot of these metrics are just stripping out luck or sequencing and being like, well, this pitcher gave up single, double, home run. What if the home run came first? And it was home run, double, single. So you change the sequencing, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, this pitcher is getting like really unlucky. The timeliness of these home runs are when there's guys on base.
Now you could say that maybe pitching out of the stretch is not what he does well, and there's other factors that go into that too.
100%. So that would be exactly, that would be my next question. Are there certain pitchers where this might be repeatable, or it's not bad luck because they're pitching in a different way, or maybe they get hyperfixated on like the runners on base, and they, so they're.
Well, this is no different than a conversation that we had on one of the shows that we recorded about the AFC North in Baltimore and their turnover luck.
Yep.
That they have, over the past, at least in the Harbaugh era, which is no longer going on, they were just very good at recovering fumbles. Pittsburgh was another one.
Yeah.
Very good at recovering fumbles over time. Do they have more skilled players? Do they practice this more? Something is up. Back in the day, it used to be Matt Cain's batting average of balls in play.
Yeah.
People be like, this guy is going to regress so hard throughout the course of the year because his BABIP is like 213.
Yep.
And it's like, well, no one's is that low with the amount of balls that he's putting on the ground. But it turned out that it was sustainable for him for like 3 or 4 years. It wasn't, because you're always going to have your 1 year outlier. There's only so many games. In football, it's going to be even more pronounced with only 17 games, and guys aren't even playing all 17 games. And you don't have the same 11 guys on both sides of the ball at all times in different conditions. I understand that. But with him, it turned out like when you dug into it more, he was throwing this like, I think it was a circle change
I was about to say
that was going away and dropping in the zone. So when people were making contact and hitting the ball on the ground against him, they were just weakly hit ground balls.
Right. A lot of people solved this back in the day, like really good bettors. Marco Estrada was a Toronto Blue Jay with the exact same thing, where his advanced metrics are always painted him in a much worse picture because his BABIP was always so low. And it's like, this can't happen forever. It's like, well, Marco Estrada's secondary pitch is a really good changeup that drops away, so he induces a ton of soft contact. Nowadays, AI can solve problems like that because it can find those similarities. Like if you were to just feed it all the data in the league from every single pitcher for, I don't know, the last decade or so, and be like, is there like some sort of consistent theme amongst the pitchers that have
a low BABIP?
Yeah, it would probably find that for you and be like, yes, here's what I uncovered. They have Like nowadays you can measure like how much a ball moves vertically and horizontally.
With the speed
Yeah,
coming off the...
you can get all that stuff. We didn't have that 10 years ago, but that's like a perfect example. And listen, there's sometimes the shit will work against you as well. Like I did the show with you last year and we kind of would laugh all the time about the Jets and like, oh, the Sharps are betting the Jets again. Haha. Like, but the Jets didn't record an interception all of last year. Like that's an extreme outlier. And like when you're modeling for something like that, you're like, at some point, a ball is going to go off a lineman's head up into the air. You just had like an extreme anomaly. But, your goal is, we have so much data available in all sports nowadays. And we can kind of know what we're looking for, but we can use artificial intelligence as a tool to guide us along the way.
Well, I want to end with that because figuring out what is important and what's not, I think, is more critical now than ever. Because if I want to make a case for any player, any team, I will be able to find not only like surface level stats, but a very compelling case one way if I just don't talk about it the other way. And I can find that for you. And that's what I was talking about with like, 3 deep coverage or versus 8 in the box and whatever it might be. I can skew that data. It might be disingenuous to skew it that way, but I could skew it that way, say it with some authority and sell you on, no, this is how it's going to go.
Well, of course. I mean, like I can't back this up as a statement of fact, but I run a content business in addition to betting, and I consume a lot of content on the side, and I have a good idea. I know how AI speaks.
Oh, yes.
Right? There's certain giveaways, words, the way that it structures sentences. I know Claude, for example, uses genuinely as a word a lot. I've noticed an influx of content creators who are just using AI. So, I mean, you could go to Claude now and be like, Bills are playing the Patriots this week. Bills are a 3-point favorite.
Need a 350-word script that I want loaded into the prompter. No problem. Give me 2-3 stats and a pick at the end. Oh, listen, I've dabbled with it. I've never actually done it.
Yeah.
I've dabbled with it to see will this match? And then I get back to this doesn't match how A, I would speak for one thing, or B, actually what I think about this game.
But generally, you got to think about how Claude or any AI is going to prepare that answer for you, and it's going to research based on the internet. So it might take stuff that somebody said on 4 for 4 or establish the run.
Or take it
from you yourself.
For golf stuff, it actually does do that.
Yes.
Like, hey, I need to know like this, and it will reference my article that I've already written.
Right. So as someone who's a viewer in the audience, it now becomes a lot more difficult to tell like what's authentic versus what's not authentic, what was AI generated, what's not. But yeah, I mean, like, the use cases are endless. I mean, it's why jobs are going away. It's like things that you didn't even think that robotics or artificial intelligence could do are now replacing jobs because that's the level of sophistication that we're at this point.
All right. Anything else about AI or research do you think needs to be put in? Any sites that you want to give a special shout out to that people should know about?
I think like NextGen stats is the next big thing. Individual player level data for the NFL in particular. PFF, Sumer Sports actually has their...
What is it, sorry?
Sumer, S-U-M-E-R.
Okay.
Actually has their own AI built into their site. So they're like basically a data platform, and you can query just on the site. Like they've...
Can you straighty any of these answers, or you can only query it?
I honestly don't know. I've never... But yeah. There's... I'm a big proponent of... looking at as many things as possible.
But you're good at discerning at least in your mind, if you are a successful bettor, then obviously you're shown the ability to do this. Not as many people are good at discerning between this matters, this doesn't matter. And that is a problem for a lot of people.
Sure, but then you got to be real with yourself about betting.
Be real with yourself.
No,
people are also very bad at that.
Well, for sure, but like I'll just straight up say it, but like again, I said it off the top, right? If you're looking for a shortcut, AI will provide you with some shortcuts. It doesn't mean the quality of the output is going to be any good. You still have to recognize if you are using AI for betting, you are still betting into a market against other people who might be using the same tools or not. But if they're doing it in a more sophisticated way, in a smarter way, then frankly, you're screwed. And there's nothing wrong with betting recreationally and casually, and maybe, you just want to save time and still have bets, but the expectation is to lose. Fine, that's got to be the expectation, though. Like, I mean, it's probably the 10th time I don't know how many times I said it, but garbage in, garbage out. I always say that because people, they throw garbage into garbage prompts. Like, yeah, I'm betting the NFL week 1. Here's all the NFL games week 1 with the point spread.
Which is the best bet.
Yeah, find me the winners. Like, yeah, that's garbage. Like, you're going to get a garbage response. But if you are more, structured with what you're asking, you will get a better response. And if you start getting really good at this type of stuff, I mean, eventually over time, you potentially could automate your process. Maybe you go from a loser to a winner. But I still think for the average person, the best use case is efficiency and time savings. The stuff that you would do that takes you forever, even if you're playing fantasy football, like you can ask Claude to run a research report for you of like what all,
What are the upcoming schedules for my entire team from weeks 5 to the end of the season? Who are players that I could sell high on right now based on their difficult strength of schedule, and who are targets that I should go for at a similar position? Just that simple prompt would probably give you like 5 answers.
I agree. So like that to me is a good use case. But you remember that the responses are trained over data that's been put into the AI for years, plus Google results and stuff like that. So, if you don't you might just get an aggregation of crap is what you might end up getting from like, it might source you an answer from one of the most popular websites on Google, but doesn't really have any authority in like being good at predicting fantasy.
Yeah, they had good SEO 8 years ago, so they rank highly.
Right. So you got to understand that. And that's why being hyper-specific is very important.
All right, Rob Pizzola, you can get more on AI in a more condensed version, maybe a more specific version as well. In the show notes, I've linked it over to Circles Off. You can find more on the Hammer and the Forward Progress YouTube channel. I think it's going to be it. We did 3 big research shows gearing up for the NFL. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I should have leveraged AI to put together some talking points, I think. But I think we did a good job.
I think we ended up getting like 5 hours of content out of this. I think we're okay.
Yeah.
There's only so much content people can have about not picks.
True. They're still going to want... I know no matter how much I've talked about don't prompt AI with who are the picks.
They're like, I can use AI to make picks. This is great.
Maybe if I ask it for the picks, but I'm a little bit more specific, that might work. That's not going to work.
We will be doing a pick show in season, me, you, and Cam. Well, I don't know if he even knows what AI is.
Man, getting.
Can we get AI versus Cam?
We did that back in 2012, 2013. Wasn't AI, but essentially the same thing. I was a big Rage Against the Machine fan at that time, and there was a website. It was a tout site, but it was called Prediction Machine, and it was it was simulating games, like way ahead of its time. And we did a segment called Cam Against the Machine, but so Cam would give a pick on the game, and then I knew what the machine was picking, so I would create a script that was I put into like voice converter, and it would convert into like a robot talking like, Cam, your pick is shit. You don't know what you're talking about. Like one of those things. And then the founder of the site, Paul Basier, would give like the real rationale as to why the machine likes that play. But Cam used to get so rattled. You fucking machine, this and that. And I tell him after the show, I'm like, Cam, like I put those together. He's like, you went too hard today, Pizzola. Little too deep, like, insulting my girlfriend or whatever. He's like, you crossed the line. I'm like, yeah, but the machine made the recommendation. He's like, okay, like maybe get the machine to calm down a little bit. Cam Against the Machine, one of my favorite segments we ever ran. The best. Can
we get him with something like that this year?
Yeah.
We'll brainstorm.
Cam versus AI would be really good. And again, Cam he's a good sport, but like if you could get the robot, like the AI, to insult him in any way where he is now firing back against like it can be gold, potentially.
All right. If you have ideas for Cam versus segments, dump those into the comment section right now. All right. Follow Pizzola. Check him out at Circles Off and at the Hammer and the Forward Progress YouTube channel. All the videos that we've done already are all linked along with more research tools down there on the show notes as well. All right. I'm Pat Mayo. Smash a like on the way out. Sub to the channel. Tell some friends about Mayo Media Network. It's a fun time. It's more fun than talking about research stuff. Eventually, we'll just be having hot takes about picks. Eventually, but we wanted to set the table for you to do your own research, get better at this stuff, and become better bettors this year, okay? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience!
experience.